And I'm live, and I'm by myself. I don't have Dr. Art here. Dr. Art is a grandfather for the first time, so he's taking care of family business, and he won't be around at all this week. He'll be back next week. So you just go over to Dr. Art's Hot Rod Rehab and congratulate him over there, and all the best with his family. E-Fog, what's happening, man? You're the only guy in here. See, nobody wants to come and just talk to me. They want to talk to Dr. Art too, right? So what's going on, everybody? Not that there's anybody here yet, but it's been hot here. We're having this crazy, insane heat wave. It's like a radioactive heat. It's got to be. I got the air conditioning going like full blast now for the last 20 minutes, and it's still like 95 degrees in here. So if I'm sweaty, that's why. Old McDonald has a car. I like that. E-I-E-I-O. Good Wednesday evening, everyone. Bill McKeisker, what's happening? Dickie Farley. Frank Emro, what's going on? Nathan McCree, what's happening? Well, it's kind of weird being here by myself. This is the first time I've done a live by myself in a long time. Terrence Seymour. I just got home from getting a molar out. Oh, jeez. I got a loose tooth right here. It's been loose for about, I don't know, 25 years or so. And I'm serious. I'm showing you something around. Usually I pull them out myself, but this one's like just stuck in there. Let's see. Chosen Undead. Christopher Barube, howdy. Harry Carpenter, what's happening from Boulder, Colorado. Christopher Denardis, fixing on a garage. Mexican Spec said to let you know he's getting his uvula removed and won't be here tonight. That's tragic. I hate to hear of anybody having uvula issues. Uncle Kathy had a uvula transplant years ago, and it's worked out pretty well. She rants in Polish for some reason since then. She doesn't speak, didn't speak any Polish beforehand. So, where's Dr. Art? Dr. Art, I just said it a minute ago. Dr. Art his daughter had a baby, and he's going to be out this week. He'll be back next week. Let's see. Terrence Seymour. He said this one had very curly roots and almost needed general anesthetic. Chosen Undead. Uncle Tony, what do you think about using an M-body Plymouth for hot rodding? They're good. They're good. I mean, the only difference between the M-body and any of the others, aside from the isolated suspension and all, which they started using like in the B-bodies in '73, is those torsion bars, which is, so you got two things, right? The bonus is that under car clearance is amazing because you don't have the torsion bars running back and forth like that. So plenty of room for header clearance and working on the car underneath there. The downside of it is that those torsion bars, the longitudinal mounted torsion bars on the FMJ bodies, don't work as well for drag racing. They don't unload the way the traditional torsion bars do. But for a regular street car and just cruising around and stuff like that, man, they're great. Yes, congratulations, Grandpa Dr. Art. Yeah, well, you guys go over there, find his latest video, and congratulate him over there. I'm sure he'll be happy to see it. I think he probably should have called Kiwi. not much of a chance of him showing up here. Let's see. John said, well, Uncle Tony, where's the propane project at? It's right here. I've got all of the brake parts for it. I've changed direction mentally on that project on the propane Belvedere a couple of times, and that's kind of like why I've been holding off, because I have a couple of different visions of what I want to do with that car, and I'm not really sure yet. So I just kind of like put it on the side until I got a clear vision of it. But I have almost everything I need to put the car together. Just don't know exactly how I want to put it together yet. Does that make any sense? I know. I'm sorry if you're waiting. It's not that I'm procrastinating. I just don't have a clear vision yet. UTG, will you ever do a small block Chevy full build? I would if somebody was to bring me one. If somebody local had a small block Chevy that they wanted to go through, yeah, I'd be happy to do it. Not for nothing, but I've probably built more small block Chevys than I have Mopars, only because I was a regular mechanic for so many years. And so, just just rebuilding small block Chevys was my shops in New York always had small block Chevys apart and parts on the shelf and blocks and heads and cranks and everything else because they did so many of them for customers. But yeah, if somebody was to bring me a small block Chevy and say, "Hey, let's do this on your channel," I'm like, "Yeah, let's do this thing." Hank Hill, got a question for you, Tony. Do you rent or own your shop? I rent this place. I'm looking for a garage to rent so I can restore a car of my own. Unfortunately, I don't own a garage. Are there places I can rent? Hank, I mean, I don't know where you are. I'm not a psychic. I'm not Nostradamus, man. Yes, find something, rent it. Find storage units that will allow you to work on them. You have to hunt for them. They're usually out in the hinterlands, right? But you find a nice size storage unit that you can work out of, where they just don't care what you do there, and do it there. It's going to cost you like $100, $200 a month, and you have electricity and a place to lay out your tools and everything else. And just, but I'm not, I can't like find a place for you. Johnny Brandon, what's better for the street, a tight stall converter or loose? What are you doing on the street, Brandon? Johnny, what are you doing on the street? Like, are you cruising? Is it a driver, primarily purpose, a type converter? Is it a street race car? Yeah, a loose converter, and especially when you're racing on the street, when you or any type of no prep surface, converter choice or the converter design is very important. You can't just go by the numbers. You can't just go by the stall number, because the converter has to have a certain characteristic to evenly lay the power down, smoothly lay the power down. So the answer to that question is, if it's a cruiser, a driver, or anything like that, a tighter converter, and you can generally just go by what's in the catalog. It says 3,800. That's what you're going to get, more or less. If you're talking about a no prep street race type of thing, then get together with a converter guy and give them all your specs, and they'll work out a profile of a converter that will work best for you. Chosen Undead, I'm thinking about building an 89 Fury with at least 300 rear wheel horsepower that is good for daily driving and laying rubber. Sounds perfect. That sounds perfect. Christopher Barube, small nitrous hit on a 10-5-1 small block Chevy. Danger? Depends on the size of the hit. I think, a 75 or 100 horse shot on a 10-5-1 motor on the fat side, no problem. It starts to become critical. I mean, nitrous isn't really like artificial aspiration. Like, for instance, it's like a turbocharger or a supercharger where you're actually pumping air into the cylinder. Nitrous doesn't really, it cares about compression, but it's not compression critical like turbochargers or superchargers would be. But if you're talking about just a stock engine, well, it's not a stock engine, it's 3D3. And I'm sure you got a cast crank in there, the 400 crank. Yeah, I would say 150 shot is no danger. Between like 75 and 150 shot, no danger. And then once you start going past there, it's got to be. Your biggest thing is going to be rings. Were the rings gapped for boost, gapped for nitrous? That's where you run into problems with the bigger shots with a relatively stock engine. So, and you're safe with stock ring gaps with about 100 shot, 125 shot, 150 really pushing it. Beyond that, then yeah, ring gap becomes a problem. You want the gas to be open so that when all of that heat from the added fuel that you're burning with the nitrous oxide, when all that heat hits the rings and the rings go to expand, they have a place to move. If the gap isn't big enough, they butt against each other, and that's how it breaks the top of the piston. That's how it breaks the ring land of the piston. Okay. Let's see. Mopar Den. Oh, he's talking about rust beaters. Hi, Mopar Den. Steve F., good to see you, man. What happened to Kiwi? Kiwi didn't like the way he handled something. So Kiwi, we had a difference of opinion on the way a situation was handled, And I go on record as saying I don't think he handled it the right way at all. Guy Kugler. Hi, Tony. Under full throttle, shouldn't a tri-power setup have the same temperature front to back? You're talking about the plenums under, yes, under full throttle, yes. Okay. Abel D, let's talk conspiracy. Oh, God. Will the government ever try to bring back the Made in the USA sticker on our products and not assembled in the USA? Yes, but after we're completely and utterly leveled, which is in the process happening right now. So it may not take too long. KJ Kelly, Tony, do you always use a dry shift safety loop when the rules call for it? Like I have a safety loop on Bottle Rocket because Bottle Rocket's capable of running 1150s and quicker. I don't have one on Slag Hammer. Slag Hammer should be able to go that fast, but it hasn't gone that fast yet. So I don't have one on there, but I will put one on there. Just if the rules call for it. And generally, if you go quicker than 1150 or 750 in the 8th mile, you're supposed to have a dry shift loop. Okay, let's see. Joe Miller, do you know who makes a 2-barrel to 4-barrel spreadboard adapter, 318 BBD to thermoquad? I want to test the combo before I switch to the factory thermoquad intake. Don't waste your time, bro. Don't waste your time. Those 2-barrel to those 4-barrel to do, where they neck down a 4-barrel down to a 2-barrel. No, those things are a disaster because there's so many places for the fuel. So you may have sufficient opening. Let's say in the throttle bores and the 2-barrel intake manifold, but the way those adapters neck down as the fuel is coming out of the carburetor atomized, it hits all of the sharp edges and all of the surfaces alongside of that adapter. It falls out of suspension, and you get terrible distribution. Russ Peters and Daryl, UTG, speaking of nitrous hypereutectic pistons, a nitrous bad idea? They say so. Hypereutectic pistons are one of those things. I actually have got a motor with hypereutectics in it. So the thing with those is that the top ringland on those pistons is way separated from the second ringland. It's kind of out there on its own, and so evidently they're more trouble prone or more prone to failure with nitrous, but I don't know why. There is just Google the subject nitrous and hypereutectic pistons, and you're going to get all sorts of opinions. Then most of them are negative. But saying that a small shot, like we were talking about with the other guy, 100, 150 shot like that, you shouldn't have any problem, as long as it's tuned fat. As long as it's tuned to the safe side. Gasoline, a lot of gasoline. CVB, Dr. Art, Dr. Art, as I said before a couple of times now, Dr. Art is off this week. He's out of town. He's a grandfather for the first time. His daughter had a baby, and so he's taking care of family business. Let's see, Art's invisible. Let's see. Dan M, has Mission Improbable hit its peak? How much more do you think you can shave off? We haven't even started. Are you kidding me? We haven't even started with that project. No, it hasn't hit its peak. I still have not gone out hunting for a short grip, so we're still doing, a one-wheel peel, right? And the last time I had it out, we definitely had fuel starvation issues. I haven't worked on the air intake yet. I haven't done anything as far as aero goes. And we haven't gone into the engine yet. I'm not going to take that motor apart until the winter, until it's like this, So no, God, that thing, we haven't even scratched the surface with Mission Improbable yet. Granddad's junk. You and Kiwi were good friends. Surely the friendship is worth more than a misunderstanding. You guys should be able to put that behind you. Both food for thought. Listen. Kiwi is the one who's like, give me my parts back, I'm going away, right? I don't have a problem with Kiwi, right? Kiwi has a problem with me. I have a problem with the way Kiwi handled the situation, right? And just to give the short version, because I know there's so many people who pay attention to this stuff, and I don't want to like get into all of this, like he said, she said, and everything else. But after that whole situation happened with that car, and he put up the video that said Street Side Classic steps up. Man, that was in my mind. That was just like, what is wrong with It's like they got caught red-handed. They didn't step up to anything. They were trying to avoid lawsuits and all sorts of other things. Nobody stepped up. So I mean, that's how I see it. It's like no, man, you caught thieves red-handed. You don't let them off the hook in any way, shape, or form. And the owner of the car was just an absolute coward. Period. The end. So, and I don't have time for that. I just don't have time for that. So I do not have a problem with Kiwi. Kiwi had to take care of a customer. Well, no, you don't understand, right? We're in the public. Okay, we're in the public. The customer, right? The customer is secondary to the responsibility that we have to the people who watch our channels, who follow us, okay, look to people like us who have experience for guidance. That's who the responsibility is to, okay? As far as the customer goes, if it was my situation, right, I would have told the customer, come and get your car. Come in, or you want me to drop it off at your place, right? That's how I would have handled it. Period. The end. Right? Customer counts for that much. All right. You guys count for everything. Okay. So that's where the priority should be. Period. The end. Christopher Donardis, anywhere I can access your old articles relating to Pontiacs. I was the technical editor for Pontiac Magazine for like High Performance Pontiac for like 3 years, but I don't have a single copy. I don't know where you could find any of this stuff. I think you could find issues of High Performance Pontiac from 1985 to like 1988. I've got stories all through those. Wheelie King, I'm with you. Street Side Classic steps up out of the gutter only because they got busted. Exactly. And you don't cut them any slack. Why would you cut them any slack? These are thieves that got caught. They were thieves that were hung by their own words and their own advertising and their own actions. Why would anybody let them off the freaking hook? I don't want to keep going with this. I think I made my point clear. Chris Fiumessa, you make a living off of us. Kiwi makes a living off of his customers. Well, then what do you want me to tell you? What do you want me to tell you? Here's the thing. When you step out in front of into this world, okay, and you're going to sit behind the camera and you're going to talk to people and people are going to trust you, well, it's not a matter of where you're making your living. It's a matter of where you're putting yourself. And if you're putting yourself in a position of authority, if you're putting yourself in a position of doing the right thing and teaching people, well, then you take that responsibility. And it doesn't matter where you're making your living from. It's that simple. It's that simple. Dr. Art is in the house. Hello, everyone. Just checking in. Out of town. Be back next week. Yeah, I told everybody you had the baby. Not that you had the baby. I hope you didn't have it. But I told everybody about that. And no, she's not invisible. So yeah, Dr. Art will be here next week. Adam A, I don't see that, man. I don't see that. So I mean, let's you want to call it Old Testament versus New Testament? I don't know, man. I don't. But I'm not going to go that way because I know people of both, right? So don't go there. Fun with cars. You love the exhaust manifold welding video. Raw hot rodding. Stay positive. Thank you, man. Chris Greenaway, you and Casper are going to have a 2.0. I'm open for it. I'm open for it. Twisted Mopar Garage, what's happening, brother? Zach Stoddard, I've got a Holly 4160 that I can't get to lean out. Even with idle mixture screws just cracked open, and I'm still running rich or fouling plugs. Any tips on where going wrong? Yes, you have a very common problem. Take the front of the carburetor off, right? Take the bowl off. Take the metering block off, right? The surface on the main body of the block or the main body of the carburetor is warped. Take a big ass file and smooth it out, right? You would be amazed at how warped they get. And you can just about nearly always bring them back with a big file. I actually did a video on that. I don't know what it's called or how long ago I did it, but I did it. So, but that's 99% sure that's your problem. And of course, you could do the blown power valve, the classic. That's another possibility too. But no matter how you look at it, you still got to take the carburetor apart. So, Granddad's Junk, thanks, Big T. You explained that very well. I guess some of us miss you two hanging out. Listen, I love Kiwi, right? You know, he's a good guy. He's a good guy, but he might be a little too good, and he may not have what it takes. Not what it takes. He may not have the intestinal fortitude to deal with some of the stuff that you deal with when you step into this world. The world on this side of the camera is a strange place with a lot of weirdness and a lot of politics and a lot of tension and pressure that most people don't understand. You have to actually do this to get it, okay? This may not be his thing, you know? He may just need to stick to bending metal and doing what he does. He's a brilliant fabricator. The guy's just amazing. I can never say anything but the greatest, the praise for the work that he does, right? And he's a good person. He's a genuinely good person. But I don't think he's got the intestinal fortitude for this world. Power Toys, loving the content. Can't wait for the podcast. I'm going to get to it, man. I will get to it. I will get to it. Let's see. Charlton Zimmerman, how did the cast weld work out on the exhaust manifold? Does it leak? I haven't started up yet. I'm waiting for an intake manifold gasket to come so I can button up the rest of the engine. But I put it all together this morning, and it went together fine. It's not going to leak. I know it's not going to leak because I fixed. I can't tell you how many manifolds like that over the course of my life. And I used to gas weld. I never braze. I'm not a brazer. I don't believe in brazing. But I used to oxyacetylene weld those things using a steel rod, and never had a problem. There's a big difference between attaching an ear or an appendage or building up a boss, let's say, on a cast iron, piece of cast iron, than it is to fix a crack that runs through a casting. Two completely different things. So when you're just adding to it, right, you'd be amazed what you can get away with. Rusty Fuel, so Nitro Racing prepped you for YouTube? In a lot of ways, yeah. Nitro Racing can be a very, very humbling experience. Let's see. Dylan Sears, hey Tony, just updating you 3 weeks later. No shift transmission has a wore out case, bleeding fluid, pressure causing no shift. How do you get it on? It happens. Fun with cars. You have to drill the ends of the crack to stop it. Yes. Eric's Garage, Tony, you still have the whiplash and bottle rocket? No, I have a comp roller in there. There's been a comp roller in there. Like I had that whiplash came in there when you first put it together. And I don't remember exactly. It was such a long time ago now. I don't remember exactly what happened. Was it a lifter issue? I think I had a lifter issue with it. It took about years now. And I went from the flat tapper to a comp roller. So it's a hydraulic roller that I've got solid lifters on. Really, the ends of your crack would be pretty easy to find. Yeah, I think he was talking about when you've got a crack inside a casting. And the reason for that, for you guys that know, a crack will not spread past a radius. So the idea is to create a radius at the end of the crack so that it won't go any further. So that's why you drill the ends of a crack. SYD Rider, Tony, how do you repair a leaking brake line connection? It depends. Whose car is it? Because if it's my car, I use compression fittings. I've been using compression fittings on brake lines since the 1970s. And I've never, ever, 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 ever had a problem with it. My car. If I'm doing for somebody else, then I replace the line or the fitting or whatever it happens to be with the proper thing. So, you know, shoot me in the face. What do you want me to tell you? I use compression fittings on brake lines. Let's see. Rust beat a derelict's old railroad trip for fixing cast iron stitching pins. I've done videos on that. Chris Greener with Tony, bottle rocket flattened the lobe and wiped the lifter. Yeah, I knew it was something like that. It's been such a long time, and I have so many other things in my head right now. I just couldn't remember what happened with it. Johnny Barrington, I'm thinking about replacing the headers with 2.5 inch exhaust manifolds. Tired from burning plug wires and big performance loss. On a regular driver kind of street car, you'll never see the difference. Honestly. One Car Garage. What rear end gears are in Bottle Rocket and Slayer Camera? Bottle Rocket has 456s with a spool, and Slayer Camera right now has 430s in it with welded spiders. It's the wrong gear for it. It's the absolute wrong gear for it. I put the 430s in there, knowing the intent of building a stroker. I have all of the parts for a 452 sitting back at my house. So the intent was to send Slayer Camera with that 383, play around with it, and then put the 452 in it. So I put the 430 gears in it. Well, I decided to stick with the 383. And those 430 gears is not enough. It really is like a set of 513s. I've got 49s. I just haven't swapped them in yet. I'm lazy. Let's see. Willie Tingo, I know my humor can be strange at times. You don't know strange humor. Just spent some time in my world. Uh-oh, what happened here? Did this thing, I think this froze. We still here, guys? Barrow's Garage, what's happening, man? Chris Greenaway, I remember how distraught you were when you checked Andy's GTX and found improper crown lifters. Yeah. Chongo's still there, yes. Did I say Fubar? Fubar, are you here? I thought I saw you before, and and it just flipped all the way through. Yes. Okay, the mighty Fubar is in the house. And Zugi22 is here. Nice. I think Mexican Spec is here, isn't he? Oh no, he's having a uvula. He's having a uvula crisis or something like that. And Fubar just put up a link to my merch. These UTG T-shirts and hats and stuff that we have. Thank you so much, Fubar. So yeah, we've got all kinds of things in the store. I think we've got. I think Kathy's got some new things coming. I hope. I think so. Yes, UncleTony'sGarage.com. The formula. What's going on? Nothing, man. We're just waiting for you to show up. Now the party can start. Olive, what's happening, Olive? I love you, Olive. You know that? I mean, seriously, we're so diametrically opposed in our reviews and stuff like that. But you still stick around. You still come by. I really, honestly, you know, I love you. You're awesome. Chongo, how's the Goldwing? I'm doing a video. I think I'm going to do it tomorrow because I think I have finally found the balance to a fleet. And I think I'm going to do a video. I've got 5 bikes that are now in permanent, permanent members of the fleet. So I'm going to do a video tomorrow, just a review of each and why I've chosen each. So I'll get into the Goldwing with that. Olive, you skipped a rabbit hole or two, didn't have the patience right then. David Elliott, did you ever use gold dust or bleach? No, that was all before my time. Gold dust. So gold dust is a rosin. Actually, they use it for bowling alleys. Not bowling alleys. What the hell is it they use it for? Well, the gold dust is a rosin that they used to sweep onto the starting line of drag strips before they had glue. And the bleach burnouts lasted, that whole period lasted about a year. That was like 1970 when they were doing burnouts with bleach. And then that was it. The NHRA banned it because everybody that would be standing around would freckle their clothes doing the bleach burnouts. And the theory there was that it softened and cleaned the rubber as you did a burnout in it. But no, I never used either of them. Glenn Daniels. I had a 77 AMC Hornet that came with a pair of dogleg heads. I was told it could be machined to work on a big black Dodge. Ever heard such a thing? No, they can't be. They're completely different. Like the bore spacing and everything is different. You couldn't use the AMC heads on a big black Chrysler. They have a dogleg exhaust port because it's the same as, it's a shape just exactly like the small block Mopar, which also has a dogleg exhaust port. And the reason for the dogleg exhaust port is because the AMC doesn't have 5 bolts around each cylinder. It has 4 bolts around each cylinder. So in order for the exhaust port, the center 2 exhaust ports, they have to be dog-legged to fit around the bolt, the head bolt that's in that position. They are excellent heads though. Those AMC heads are excellent. And One Car Garage, what's the story with that blue Roadrunner in your personal garage? Does that thing move? Why no videos? I built that car 10, 12 years ago. We used it for a little while. I don't know. It's almost like I've got a block. It runs great, but I've got and we've had videos of the engine running and shit like that in the garage, but I just haven't taken it out. It's a car that I built. I explained this in a previous video. It's a car that I built that was the car that I wanted when I was like 16. And it's 100% of that car is 1970s. Everything is from the 70s. And it's representative of like a typical New York street rat from the 1970s. And I built it figuring, this is the truth now, so here's what happened. When I quit drag racing, I got out of cars 100%. I had nothing to do with cars, 100% motorcycles for several years. And then when I started to get back into cars, after being away from the street thing for decades, I just assumed that it hadn't changed. So I built that car to do the type of things that we used to do in New York in the 70s and the 80s, only to find that that doesn't exist here. That scene does not exist. And so the car really doesn't have a place in the world, if that makes any sense. I don't want to change it because it represents what I wanted when I was 16, and it's perfect. You know, if you had a time machine and you go back to 1977 and say, what's the baddest car on the boulevard? It's going to be a car just exactly like that Roadrunner, set up exactly like that Roadrunner. But in today's world, it really just doesn't have a place. So it just sits in the garage. Does that make any sense? Rob's Classic, is it ever too late to have an Italian meal? No, of course not. What's this? Johnny Barrington, I have a 750 Holly. Both bowls are full of gas, but engine not getting gas. You ever have this problem? No. No. If the bowls are full, it's got to be getting gas. Barrows, what would make an HER distributor cause an engine to surge like it has a blower on it? I pulled it back off and I'm sending it to a priest before I send it back. I don't know, man. I don't know. Craig Simpson, driving around, best to keep max vacuum via gauge. So that's about fuel mileage. You want to always drive that. So in the 60s and the 70s, they used to put vacuum gauges in cars, and if it was a performance car, it was performance indicator, right? So the vacuum gauge would read, the vacuum would drop off and would show you it's making power, right? It's just a gimmick. And if it was an economy version of the car, it would have that same gauge, but it would be marked for economy, right? So you want to, the thing with that is that you want to drive to the highest vacuum for maximum economy. So basically that just means the smallest throttle opening necessary to maintain a speed. And you would be surprised because you can pick up usually 2-3 miles to the gallon by paying attention to the gauge, right? By consciously always just keeping the needle at its highest point, you can actually pick up fuel mileage. You don't realize when you're driving without paying attention to the gauge, you don't realize how much play there is in a throttle in a typical car, how much movement there is to the throttle opening to maintain a certain speed. So by maintaining that speed with the smallest opening, you get the highest velocity, you get the best atomization qualities, and you get the best gas mileage. It's my Italian meal hit me back right there. Let's see. Okay, Eric's Garage. I got a strip bolt on torque converter. If I tap it out for the next size up, will it throw off the balance with a bigger bolt? No, it won't. It won't. That's such a minor difference. You'll never see it. Let's see. All right, so you guys are talking amongst yourselves. I'm trying to catch up to your conversation to see if there's anything interesting there. Mark Survey, you kept watching for the live to start and couldn't find it, but here we are. Here we are. Holy shit! We're already almost 40 minutes into this thing. Apple cider vinegar and water fixes acid reflux. Apple cider vinegar is an amazingly effective thing with a lot of uses. You guys, you ever get, this happens to all of us. We're guys, except for you, Olive, right? maybe it applies. I don't know. But those itches, right? You'll get occasionally, as a man, apple cider vinegar. Fix it right away. That might be too much information, but trust me, it's a tip you'll appreciate at some point. T-Chaps 88. I know you're a New York drag racer at heart, but what's your opinion on sprint cars? I think they're awesome, but it's a culture that is completely foreign to me. I wish, again, see, I was born and raised in New York City. I didn't move to Tennessee till I was 40 years old. And by that point, I had pretty much done everything I wanted to do. And I got the racing thing out of my system. I just don't have it in my system anymore. But if I was younger and lived in a part of the country where that sort of thing was prevalent, I think I could have gotten involved in it and really enjoyed it. But yeah, it's neat stuff. Just not part of my native culture. Rust Peter Derelicts, UTG. Fun with cars is looking at a 59 Rambler. Problem is, older Ramblers, parts availability is not great. Yeah, I agree with that. You got to go hunting for stuff. Those trunnion joints and stuff like that. Yeah. Something like a 59 Rambler is a great shell to build off of. But to work with the original parts that are there, and no, yeah, like that's a good car to build. Like to build. You got a shell, you gut everything, and you put a chassis in it and all 10 yards. That's what I would do with something like a 59 Rambler. They're orphan cars. Oh, Olive makes a version of tartar sauce with the apple cider vinegar. Excellent. Mark Sabe, did you see the YT YouTube link I sent you about the Dodge family making an offer to Stellantis? I thought it was Walter P's great grandson. I didn't know it was the Dodge family. I thought it was Walter P's great grandson or something like that. And I saw that, but I don't really know very much about it. Tugger Speedman. Okay. There's an interesting question, Tugger. Can a rusty bare engine block that sat outside be rebuildable? I'm buying one for $50 at 302. So here's an interesting fact, okay? Back before aftermarket blocks were common, right? When professional racers, like pro stock guys and stuff like that, were building, and even NASCAR guys, were building using factory castings. One of the things that they would do was season the blocks. So, like, if you were to like let's say it's like 1975, 76, and you go by Jenkins Competition, and you go to the back of his shop, you would see stacks of old blocks. And what they would do is leave them out in the weather, okay? And they would let them rust, and that was what they called seasoning the blocks. When those guys back in those days would go to build a competition engine, like a pro stock engine, they would deliberately look for taxi cab blocks. They would look for delivery truck blocks. They would look for high mileage police. They would look for high mileage, highly stressed blocks, because the theory there that goes hand in hand with seasoning the block was that all of the stresses are relieved from the casting by going through these heating and cooling cycles. So if you take a bare block and just leave it out there in the weather and let it rust for a couple of years, the sun beating on it, expanding it, and it ices up and it contracts all like that, that it strengthens the block. It seasons it. It makes it more malleable. And so the more malleable a block, the casting is, the less likely it is to crack under severe use. So back to what you were saying, yeah, an old 302 that's been, a bare block that's been laying around and getting rusty for all these years, it's probably the perfect starting point for high performance build. T-Chaps, it was Chrysler's grandson. It sounds like he really doesn't have the money to make it happen. Yeah, that was the impression that I got. When I saw that was the impression that I got. And so I was like, pipe dreams. Woody Wood, I heard old guys buried the blocks to season them. I think everybody had their different ideas of how to season a block, but I do know that for sure what they would look for was like tow truck blocks, stuff like that had been used and abused and everything else, and that's what you would build your racing engine off of because all of the stresses were worked out of it. T-Chaps, Roger Rager was the last guy to run a small block Chevy in the Indy 500 in the early 1980s. I kind of remember that. And it came out of a school bus. There you go. Rob's Classics is saying they would do that to milling machine tables too. They found that they were much more stable. Tugger, great. Thanks. Google couldn't even give me an answer. Well, because now you're really digging into the obscurity of, you know what I mean? Like that's really obscure stuff. But for sure, that was the standard of the industry. That was like back when they were running production blocks, right? They want the most abused piece that they could get because that was the one that was going to live when you really put the suds to it. Dickie Farley, if you need me to, I can pick up my belongings and my dog and head your way for the next Wednesday. Now, Dr. Art will be back. He'll be back. I appreciate the offer, though. You can send the dog. I love dogs, man. Chuck Austin, how do you see the future of gasoline-powered vehicles in America? It's the whole alternative fuel thing it's a scam, right? And it's had its day. Okay. Now I'm not saying that eternally for all of the future, that gasoline is going to be the thing that powers cars. I'm not saying that, but I will absolutely guarantee that for as long as you, me, and our kids are alive, gasoline is going to be the primary fuel. Gasoline didn't just get there by accident. It works because it's the perfect fuel for the job. You see what I'm saying? It's the perfect fuel for the job. And the job has to do with the terrain and the environments that we use our machines in. So it just so happens that gasoline is compatible with that. It'll work in 20 degrees below zero. It'll work at 120 degrees above. It's versatile, right? It works. It's easy to make out of an extremely abundant. All of the shortages and stuff like that is bogus. That's not true. There's an abundance of things you can make gasoline out of, and we have tons and tons of it. No shortages. It's the perfect fuel for what we do. If at some point in the future, like transportation is evolved, you know what I mean? Let's say we go back to the old days where people lived in very tight areas. Now, I'm not talking about 15-minute cities, but we're done with suburban sprawl. Now let's all come back to like inner cities with squares and stuff like that. At that point, then gasoline could probably be replaced. But as long as we live in subdivisions and way out where, no, it ain't going anywhere. Jimmy Hack, good question. Will they refuse registration someday on gas vehicles? No, don't worry about that. Mostly Mopar, putting together the 318 for a 73 Roadrunner, building it closely as I can to the bottom rocket platform. Just need to pick a cam and find a light fixture from Goodwill for the car. Do I still have it on there? I don't know if I still have that on there. I walk past it 50 times a day, but I'm not sure if that's still on it or not. So currently it's got a custom comp cams roller in it, right? But I originally put that together with a Hughes Whiplash cam, which is the one I would recommend. If you're building a streetable, fun 318, go get a Hughes Whiplash and stick that on there. Shango, any chance you will do another live with Jeff Stunkard? He did a short on my car at Carlisle. Enjoyed the discussion. I love Jeff. Jeff is awesome. Jeff is such a quality human. You have no idea, and you probably don't, right? Jeff is a really, really good guy, but he's super hard to get a hold of. Like he'll text me, or he'll call. I don't answer the phone. I look at texts. And he'll text me, and then he doesn't return. I'll return it, and he just disappears. He's hard to nail down. But yeah, absolutely, I would love to. Let's see. Will we comply? Nope. Nope. I ain't complying. Never did. Never will. Dr. Giggles 225. What are your thoughts between the small block Chevy 305 and 350? I know the 305 gets a bunch of crap because of lacking power, but I think they can be very reliable and fun to drive if they're not lumped on too much. So the biggest problem with the 305 is the heads that they put on them. Zero, which happened in Zero. So the 305, and I don't know the casting numbers, but I've dealt with these in the past, right? The 305 has how can I explain it to you? It's like an undercut bowl, all right? They put small valves in the 305 cylinder heads, but the casting is the same as the one that they put the bigger valves in. And so they have an undercut bowl. So the typical situation is with any engine, right? The typical situation is you get in there and you clean out the bowls. You round them, right? You get rid of any imperfections and stuff like that, and then you blend them up into the valve. But on those heads that they use on the 305s, you can't do that because it actually is undercut. So you have the valve seat, and then you go underneath the seat, and it goes out. So if you ask me, that's the biggest problem with the 305s. The bore is, but it's not that big of a deal. Travis McKnight, I got a fuel gauge function always reading empty. I should just replace the whole fuel sending unit. I don't know if it's worth trying to fix. So find the wire. I have no idea what kind of car you're talking about, right? But all of the gauges operate off basically the same thing, right? Find the wire closest to the tank, all right, that goes to the sending unit, right? And this just applies across the board. Find the wire that goes to the sending unit, all right? Take a test light, pierce the wire with the test light. So ground one end of the test light and pierce the wire with the other end of the test light. Now go look at the gauge. Did the gauge move? If the gauge moved, the sending unit is bad. Did the gauge not move? Then you have a problem someplace else. It could be in the gauge, could be in any of the wiring in between, but that's how you test them. Scott Anderson, I had an older 7350 with a cracked head and put 305 heads on it, and it seemed like it had a hair more horsepower and torque. It would. Downstairs, the smaller valves create higher velocity, right? Given a cubic inch. So by putting the smaller valve heads on an engine that originally had bigger valve heads, you will definitely notice a drivability improvement. So part throttle, mid RPM, let's say up to like 4,000 or 5,000 RPM, you'll see a performance improvement with the smaller valves. It starts to choke the engine once you get over, let's say 4,500, 5,000 RPM, and that's where you really see the difference. So if you're looking for drivability, you go with the smaller valve head. If you're going for horsepower, you go with the bigger valve head. Dr. Giggles, in your personal opinion, what do you think of the third gen Camaros? I like them, just hate how the exhaust is routed. They're not my cup of tea. They're not my cup of tea. I mean, they're all right. I'm not knocking them. They just don't do anything for me. 307 is a D-stroke 327. Yeah, it's got the 283 crank, right? Um, 307 is a D-stroke 327. Yeah, I think that I forget what the combination was. 307, 283 block, 327 crank. Isn't that the other way around? Yeah, I mean, you might be right, but I would thought it was the other way around. Harry Australia, are the FBO distributor limit plates any good? Have you used one? I have not. I do when I do a distributor for myself, I do it the old-fashioned way, the way I've always done it. And so I'm not saying that they're not good or they don't work. I just haven't used them because I just have my way of doing them. Yeah, Bear Rose is saying back in the 80s and early 90s, we'd put 305 heads on a 350 to jump the compression. You do gain horsepower, but they top out really quick because they don't flow very good. 305 heads have a very small chamber. Yeah. '72 Z20 didn't know the Chevy 307. It's the most neglected. It's like the least loved of all of the small block Chevys. Chuck Austin, you laughed so hard at the breakdancing. You like that, huh? Thank you. Okay, Russ Peter Dulles is talking about the 302 Chevy. And yes, the Mopars used a 305, which was a D-stroked 340. And they did that rather than the 318 because you were able to get those 202 intake valves on the 4-inch plus 40 bore of the 340 block. So they de-stroked them. So that was not only in Trans Am, but that was also a NASCAR combination and a popular small track combination, short track combination, and actually had a lot of those 305 Mopar parts. Very unusual pistons because they used these are stock length 6.123 connecting rod, but now when you de-stroke it and you want to get the piston up there, you got to move the pin way down. So those very, very unusual pistons. Like you could spot a 305 Mopar piston from across a crowded parking lot. Dr. Giggles, I'm running 350 heads on my 305, and surprisingly, despite what people keep telling me, the car runs great, sounds great, and is healthy. Neighbors aren't happy because there's shorty headers and tiny mufflers I got. Yeah. The thing about cubic inches, I know there's no replacement for displacement. I know, I get that. And ultimately, it's kind of true, right? In the vast majority of cases. But efficiency is even more important. And having things in balance is the most important. So you'll find a lot of happy combinations. It's just like compression, Yes, more compression makes more power, obviously, right? But then you get engines like the low compression 400 Chrysler, which and even the 440, which don't know that they have low compression. They don't care that they have low compression because they're very they're efficient engines. They're in proportion. Everything is in proportion, and so they just make lots of power. Terrence, I saw you breakdancing before I knew about the original, so I didn't know what the fuck was happening. You know, you should have realized I did. That was it. It was so spur of the moment. That was so spur of the moment. Like that wasn't planned. It was just like, you know, I just had an idea. It popped into my head because I had just seen it. I had just seen the breakdancing thing, the Olympic breakdancing thing. And I said, Kathy, go in the yard and get a camera. I'll meet you out there in a minute. So I went, that's exactly how it happened. Stevie B, saying the 396 running bed will still hurt a 350. Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Fun with cars. I just videoed the 302 Camaro. They made them for a racing class. Yes, Trans Am. It was a SCCA class series called Trans Am, and they were limited to 305 cubic inches. And that was what the original Z28 with the 302. Because originally the Z28 meant it had a 302. And those engines came with a single 4-barrel on them. But to make them legal, to make the combination legal for the Trans Am series, you could order it with a cross ram, a dual quad cross ram, and they would ship it in the trunk. So the thing would show up at the dealership with a single 4-barrel on it, and then either the dealer or you would swap the 4-barrel over for the cross ram. Rust Peter Derelicts, yeah, that's where I think Ford messed up going to 360 for pickups to replace the 352. Pistons way down the hole with no squish. Well, the word you're looking for is quench, right? And the thing about quench is that it hurts, it helps power, but it hurts emissions. And so that's why you see everybody went to the open combustion chambers. Closed chambers, quench was a common thing up until 1969. Or thereabouts leading up to it, where they knew emission standards were going to start changing. And so as they were designing cylinder heads to be used in the next several years forward, they went to open combustion chambers. That's why like 1967 Mopars have closed chamber, the big blocks, they actually small blocks too, have closed chamber closed chamber cylinder heads. And in 68, they went to open chambers because they knew that casting, that basic casting was going to be used for the next 5 years, 8 years, whatever it is. And by that point, they knew that emission standards were going to have to be met. And so that's why they started going to the open combustion chambers in the very late 60s. Let's see. John Painter, what's your opinion of derby cars or figure eight racing? You know, so I'm all for that kind of racing, except when guys bring out stuff that really should have been saved. Like if the derby culture, right, and the figure eight culture was based on just common, just bullshit cars that you're gonna find in any junkyard or pick up on the side of the road for $150, I'd be like, yeah, that's cool, go for it. But they take cars that are classics. They take cars that are desirable, that should be saved, and they it's almost like some of these guys take great pleasure in destroying them, and that's where you lose me. That's where you lose me. If derbies and figure eight racing was just, you know, nonsense cars, Ford Tauruses and stuff like that, right? That just nobody on earth cares about. You know, I'm all for it. They don't. And so you guys do your own thing. Boomer, Tony, so you remember Chrysler's attempt at the fuel injection systems on the V8s? It was like a carburetor on a way, total. Well, you're talking about the throttle body. So the first Chrysler fuel injection was in 1958, electronic fuel injection, the Bendix electrojector. And I did a whole video on that. And then when was it? The Imperial in 1979, I believe it was. They threw a TBI on that, and it wasn't ready. It just wasn't ready. The technology wasn't there yet. Alan Schildroth, what was the biggest displacement engine you worked on when you were racing? The common engine then that I was working with was a 496. So we were limited to 500 cubic inches. This was NHRA's and the IHRA's rule for funny current top fuel. We were limited to 500 cubic inches. So the 496 was a standard bore with a 5/8 crank. The best combination was the 44. So the 44 was that same 4 1/4 bore with the half-inch crank, 4 1/4 inch stroke crank. Towards the end, to stay with the 500 cubic inches, they reduced the bore to the same size as a 413, 4.187, I believe it was, and went to the 3/4 inch stroke crank, which again kept it under the 500 cubic inches. But that combination, for reasons, I actually did a whole video on this. Every time I keep saying that, I did a whole video on this. When that combination became the standard in around 1994, 1995, parts breakage just skyrocketed. And so just nitro obscurity here, okay? When they went to the smaller bore, longer stroke, the rod ratio went from 1.62 to 1.57. With that 1.57 rod ratio, the exhaust valve opening point wasn't, I'm going to explain it to you. The deceleration rate of the piston past 90 degrees was greater than with the longer rod ratio. So 1.65 to 1.57, the deceleration of the piston was greater. Deceleration rate of the piston was greater. The flame front on a nitro motor is still expanding past the point that the exhaust valve begins to open. And it's actually still pressurizing the piston at the bottom of the bore. Well, because the longer stroke, smaller bore, longer stroke combination decelerates the piston quicker towards the bottom dead center, you would end up with bottom hole detonation. And in order to keep these engines from killing themselves, you had to drown them with fuel. And that's what you saw around 1996, 1997, when cars would stage, they would just be raining fuel out of the pipes, right? That was the reason, to combat bottom hole detonation. If the chamber was wet, right? I mean, and when I say wet, I mean loaded with liquid nitro, it was less prone to detonation at the bottom of the hole. And so that was that evolutionary step, and that was a bad deal. That was one of the things that put a lot of smaller guys, including most of the people I ran with, out of business, because we just could not compete on a dollar-to-dollar basis to run that much nitro through a motor to keep her from throwing a crankshaft on the ground. Those are crazy days. And it was, see, at that point too, camshaft technology started to change too. And along with, and this is one of the edges that people like Bernstein and Force and others that were hitters at that time, was that this was new technology. People didn't really understand what was going on. But they had cams that were ground that opened the exhaust valve a few degrees sooner than the ones that the rest of us were running. And so you saw a lot of the teams that didn't have a lot of money, to have, here, grind this for me just this way, right? You saw a lot of us on fire and like just bad scene. While the guys who had the connections that's regularly over 300 miles an hour. So that was an evolutionary. I'm sorry, I just went off on a friggin' tangent, guys. Excuse me for that. I'm sorry. Spitfire Mackie used to have a Donovan 417 Hemi. They were great. Problem with the Donovan 417s is that you couldn't service the bottom end. The problem with the Donovan, the thing that killed the Donovan, right? Donovan was a good motor. right? But what killed the Donovan was that it has a one-piece girdle. So it was the same problem with the Milodon 7-liter, right? The Milodon 7-liter was based on a 426 block, but instead of having individual main caps, it had a one-piece girdle. And that was a problem with the Donovan too. It had a one-piece girdle. And what would happen was now, if you got to make quick bearing changes, main bearing changes between rounds. So let's just say, for example, right, you snap a blower belt, right? You run a 417, right? You snap a blower belt. Anytime you snap a blower belt, it takes out the upper number 2 main shell because the crank does this, right? It unloads. It takes out the number 2 main shell. Well, when you're running a Donovan 417, something like a broken blower belt will put you out of business because you can't pull the girdle down and do all of the servicing to the block in a time to get back into the next round. That was what killed the Milodon 7-liter. And then what would happen was guys towards the end started cutting the saddles out of the Donovan. And when they cut the saddles out of the Donovan to make them more serviceable, then you lost all the integrity of the block. And so the block would start to move around and stuff like that. So that was the end of the Donovan 417. There were later incarnations of the motor, like Rodek made one, but that was a whole different design. The 417 was actually a really nice engine. But yeah, you break a blower belt with a 417, you're done for the day, right? You have a problem in the clutch, snap an output shaft, right? Or break a clutch. Whenever you have a clutch problem on a Nitro car, it always damages the number 4 main because again, see the crank goes like this. And when the crank whips, it doesn't hurt the number 5 main, it hurts the number 4 main. And so break an output shaft or a rear end or something like that on a Nitro car with like a 417, you're done for the day. Salom Dada, no, Milodon and Donovan were not the same thing. Completely different engines. The Milodon was based on the 426. The Donovan is based on the 392 Chrysler. Let's see. Russ Peter Derelicts, having a brain fart. The top fuel engine is based off the big block Chevy. No, top fuel engines are based off the 426 Hemi. Let's see. Joe K, why did some Mopars have the torsion rods under the hood and some had the traditional spring hood hinges? Well, you're talking about A-bodies. A-bodies had the same setup they used in the trunklets. So they have transverse torsion bars to hold the hood up. I don't know, probably just a cost thing that they later on they went to the coil springs that are mounted on the side of the footbox. Russ Peter Dolix thought the Rodek was Chevy based. Well, Rodek started with the Chevy, and then when Nostalgia Top Fuel really started to take off, and now it's on the downswing. There's barely anybody involved in it anymore. But it was starting to take off. They did an early Chrysler, a Rodek version of the early Chrysler. SYD, why was it the 426 Hemi? Because when you're dealing with large amounts of liquid fuel and it has to be evacuated easily, right? The hemispherical combustion chamber just flat works. It's the blown nitro, right? Or blown alcohol, yes. But blown nitro is really the only place where the 426 Hemi could never be matched. Only because you're taking like the equivalent of a garden hose and spraying it into the intake port. That's literally that's a big garden hose, but turned all the way up. That's how much fuel you're pushing into the engine, and so having the exhaust valve directly across, it allows that kind of evacuation, that kind of flow, and so that's why that engine took over and maintained. Let's see. Zero's talking about cross-plane crankshafts. Not saying flat plane isn't awesome. I think it just depends on what the application is. You know, I don't really have an opinion on that. Ryman Cabell, Tony, how much horsepower can we safely get out of a stroke 360 Mopar for? You're talking about a 4-inch stroke. I mean, 500-600 horsepower is probably, if the engine's built right, you know, nothing crazy, but just built right. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't hold 600 horsepower. Scoop, inlines are way cooler. Oh, I love inlines. I've always had a thing for inlines. And this Jeep, this 4-liter in Mission Improbable, such an amazing, surprising, happy engine. And it sounds awesome. It sounds awesome, both inside and outside. So yeah, I've always loved inlines. Oof, you know what? The AC quit. Hang on one second, guys. It got really hot in here all of a sudden. Sorry, firing it up again. Jimmy, have you ever messed around with straight 8? I have not. Oh yeah, I'm dealing with no air again. This is like the 4th time they've come and fixed this thing. Rust Peter derelicts. Ford tried doing a Hemi with the 427 single overhead cam and then decided it needed a 6-foot long timing chain. That engine was a pooch. It was a pooch. The people who used them in the day hated them. I would say the only person who was actually able to make those engines work with any limited success was Sneaky Pete Robinson, which, if you watch, my buddy Brian Lones just did a video on Sneaky Pete this last week, which is like everything he does, it's first rate. But yeah, Pete was able to make the camera work because of the gear drive. He had developed a gear drive for it. They got rid of the chain. Because your biggest problem with that was varying timing. Because depending on the load, right, on the engine, the timing would change. The cam timing would change. Load and RPM would cause one cam to move back and forth from the other one. So he developed this gear drive for it, which is just this maze of gears. And his combination worked. The arrows. I built a World War II fighter bomb themed rat rod a few years ago and purposely used an inline 6 to get the aviation sound out of it. It was one. Do you remember the show car from like I guess it was like the very late 60s, maybe around 67, 68, 69, the Red Baron, which was the Nazi helmet with the inline 6 with the injectors and the zoomies? Or am I imagining that? Oh, Mark, sorry, you just watched the Sneaky Pete video? Yeah, excellent. Ed's Machine, welcome. Felix Concar, oh no, I remember that as a model kit. No, it was actually a real car. Barrows, I built the Red Baron model car. You bet I remember that. And the slant six in it was the inspiration for it. Was it a slant six? Hang on, guys. I gotta hit the phone now. I gotta see this. 1 second. Uh-oh, it says here I have no internet connection. There we go. Now I got it. Ooh, I lost a lot of money today. Okay, hang on. My phone is not cooperating. I'm going to get a picture of the Red Baron car. I'm sure you guys aren't familiar with it. All right, I'm going to have to restart. There we go. All right, I got to restart my phone, and I will find a picture of the Red Baron car. Billy Bob Holcomb is saying it's a Pontiac Camry 6 in the Red Baron car. That's what I'm thinking, actually. Tony bought that very bad stock to buy, unlike the rest of the market, I think. I'm not in stocks. I'm in metals. I'm in crypto. Russ Peter Jones is saying, in my limited experience with Pontiac overhead cam 6 was learning how bad their upper end oiling was. There was an adaptation. The Pontiac overhead cam 6 was the Chevy, right? It was a Chevy bottom end, 100%, and then they came up with that head with the timing belt. I don't remember it having oiling issues, but you may remember it better than I do. Okay. Red Baron car images. Come on. This phone is not cooperating. There we go. Okay, that's the Red Baron car. Okay, and that's Olive posing with it back in the day. Olive, you're a good-looking girl. I got to tell you. Now, what motor was in that? Okay, there might be a couple of different versions of this car. I'll tell you what, there's different versions of this. All right, so the Red Baron that's currently in the Museum of American Speed, I can tell you beyond question, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is a Pontiac overhead cam. Can you guys see that? That's definitely a Pontiac. But I'm seeing like 5 different versions of this car. So who knows? Maybe they did have one with a slant 6. Let's see. Raining Slant 6, didn't Mopar's original Doomsday overhead cam Hemi also use multiple intermediate timing gears? Yeah. But I don't believe that engine was ever actually really intended to be out there. I think they cast up a couple of those to force Bill Francis' hand to say, oh no, this is going too far. I'm pretty sure they never really intended for that thing to actually go out and let's see. They should bring back the rotary engine. It's a torqueless, inefficient wonder. No, you'll never see rotaries come back. Young Son, I've seen that car before. It's like the Munsters ride. So back during that era, like the late 1960s, middle 1960s, up until like the very early 70s, they built all of these outrageous show cars. That was the thing. They used to have these national traveling show car circuits, and people built like the outhouse car and the Boot Hill Express and the what was that one? I was just thinking about this one. The Paul Revere and the Raiders built this crazy thing. Not that they built it; they had it built for them. One of the customizers. That was like an old 1800s coach and like a horse-drawn coach, and it had a short engine and transmission unit. It was a Pontiac that dragged it along like a horse. Right? They had so many completely over the top show cars back then. And when I was a kid, I didn't really pay much attention to it because I was so obsessed with drag racing that I was like, oh, that's just silly. But now, like as an old guy, and I look back at those show cars from the 60s, and I was like, man, that stuff was just awesome. Yeah, the Mysterian. The one that I think really got that started was the Uncertain T, which was pretty cool. Tommy Ivo got the whole tea bucket thing started with the cookies tea for this TV show that they were doing back in 1957, 1958. And then there was a kid. It was like a 17-year-old kid that built this thing called the Uncertain T, which is just crazy. Look up pictures of the Uncertain T to see the kind of stuff that they were doing back in those days. Yeah, the Dragula. Zero saying most didn't actually run. Some of the Ed Roth ones didn't matter. So okay, so you want to talk about getting sidetracked on like something that's completely right? This morning I watched. So I'm keeping just this eye on this thing that's going back and forth between Paul Senior from Orange County Choppers and Sean Kerr from Bikes and Beards. And have you guys seen any of this stuff that's going on? That they're going back and forth, or is it just me? But this talk about the show cars from that day reminds me of this conversation because evidently, so Sean from Bikes and Beards bought a couple of these Orange County chopper bikes, and they're turrets. They don't run. Okay. So he did a couple of videos on them and saying that it looks the bomb, right? But it don't run. It's got all kinds of issues as far as running goes. They're not really functional bikes. And I was like, okay, that would make it a turd in my mind. You would expect that if you buy a motorcycle that it's going to run. But then Paul Sr.'s side of the argument was that we didn't build it to run, we built it to be a show vehicle. And that reminded me of those 1960s. And I don't really know which side of the fence I'm on with this now, right? You know, are the Orange County choppers bogus because they don't run, right? Or are they show vehicles that are true to their form? They're supposed to be outrageous and over the top. And I don't know. I don't know which side of the fence I'm on with that. Orange County bikes suck. I'm not a chopper guy, like at all. I built a couple, nothing crazy, but I built a couple of bikes in that style back in the 90s when it was like that was the thing, right? But it was never my thing. I was never really into it. Oliver saying it seems a chopper company should be able to make a V-twin that runs even if they don't look rideable. You would think, right? But this thing's got a supercharger on it. It's way over the top. It's crazy. But evidently, it's a slug. It just doesn't run. Russ Peter Deluxe. On the other hand, you have Keanu Reeves Motorcycle Company. Arch builds bikes intended to be ridden hard by people who have $150,000 to drop on a motorcycle. I mean, now if I had 150 grand burning a hole in my pocket to say, hey, let me get a motorcycle, it's what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy 15 motorcycles of all different styles and variations before I buy one from Arch. Code improvements. I enjoyed Indian Larry. I met him once. I actually met him once. He was into Yamaha twins, and I had when I was doing bikes, when I got out of drag racing, I just went all up into bikes. I was buying stuff like there was no tomorrow, and I bought a load of Yamaha XS stuff, and I ended up selling a pickup truck bed full of Yamaha engines and frames and stuff like that to Indian Larry. His shop was maybe 15 miles from my house. Zero is saying Jesse James is a jerk. His bikes, the finish work is awesome. His bikes, his guns, the guy's a real perfectionist. Yeah, he has some issues, but I honestly, I don't think anybody can be driven to the level of perfection that he is. The guy's just an amazing. He's an artist, an amazing artist. I don't think that a normal person can be driven to excel in the way that he does. So you have to take. Jesse James is one of those things where you got to take the good with the bad. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I have ultimate respect for him. Jim A is saying Honda made a chopper called the Fury after the VTX was discontinued. I never rode it. So funny you bring that up because I have never seen one of those Honda Furies until last Sunday. Not last Sunday, Sunday before. There's a Mexican buffet that I hit every Sunday, right? And there was a yellow Honda Fury parked in the parking lot, all right? And I looked it over and It's neat. Again, see, not my style of bike, but I admire all different kinds of bikes, right? And I don't necessarily have to want to own one to admire it. And I was walking around a bike, and I was admiring it. It was the first one I'd actually seen in the flesh. And then, oddly enough, that Thursday night they had a bike night over at AB Power Sports here in Murfreesboro. And I said, "Oh, let me take a ride over there and see what's up." So I backed my bike into the spot. And then that same yellow Honda Fury backed in next to me. And I said, "I just saw you. I was just looking at your bike the other day." It's a small world. Russ Peter Joe, you still have your 72 Yamaha R5. I had a 72 R5. I can't, when it handling sucks. They create really toys though. I came down here when I moved to I had 28 motorcycles when I left New York, or I had to get rid of a lot of motorcycles. I had a little bit of everything. I had a couple of sport bikes, I had a couple of brick bikes, I had old Jap bikes, you name it, I had them, right? I got rid of everything except for 7 Ironhead Sportsters because I said, I'm just going to narrow this down to one type of bike that I can do anything with. So I came down here to Tennessee with 7 Ironhead Sportsters and 1 R5. I kept the R5. I just could not get rid of it. I had a guy one. Yeah, I was like, yeah, I got to sell this. I got to get rid of this. I was like, no, I can't. I can't have to have at least 1 2-stroke in my life. And I came down here with the R5. Were you on the Buell at the bike night? No, I think I had my black Sporty, my black 99, which is the bike I rode over here tonight. Do I still have the Super Cup? Yes. Yeah. No, the Super Cup is a keeper. I love the Super Cup. My buddy Johnny Chop, check out his bikes. I can't picture his work. Zero. Young son, I wish I could own a bike. You can. You can. You don't have to spend big money on a bike. There's lots of cheap little bikes out there for a few $100. You can go out and have a lot of fun, man. Richard Stanberry, is a Chevy 305 out of an 80s Camaro different than a 305 from an 80s pickup? No. They're the same. End of Time, you have a CB750 chopper built in 73, pearl white with blue flames. Very nice. I just canceled his pile of art. That was a very common thing, man. The CB750 choppers. To me, I love the way they look, but the sound doesn't match the way it looks. There's something about that, okay? Personally, I love brick bike choppers, like a Triumph or a Beezer chopped. If I was going to build a chopper, right, it would be based off of a British Twin. It just has the look, it has the sound, it has just everything about it just is right. I would not build a Harley chopper. It doesn't do anything for me. But if I was going to build a chopper, it would be based off of a brick Twin. Tula Toilet, my favorite chopper was a collection of parts built around a 71 iron head, right-hand shift, sporty weight, almost nothing, rear brake only, spring in front. Basically, that's the last one that I had was that. It was a 74. It was a 74 sporty. and it had a girder front end on it, skinny little everything, skinny little seats, skinny little, because in my mind, a Sportster has to be as narrow as possible, right? The thinner you get a Sportster, like you build a proper Sportster, all right, the motor has to, you have to be able to look down and see both sides of the cylinder head, right? You know what I'm saying? Right? Proper Sportster, you look down and you can see both sides of the rear cylinder head. So that's what I was meant by with those. But yeah, the last chopper I built, that's what it was. Jim A, have you seen the bike manufacturer called Janus? They have the same lineup as like Royal Enfield made in America. No, they have a different lineup, a way different lineup than Royal Enfield. But I have heard of them, and they build an impressive little machine, and I would like to do a video with those guys. This is something that's actually been in my mind for a while now. They're up in New York, and young guys, and they were into mopeds. Their thing was mopeds. They had like a little moped cult going in their town, and then they just started building them themselves, and they started styling these motorcycles that they were building after, like turn of the century bikes, like 1905, 1910 type of motorcycles, and they made a nice little business out of it. And I would actually love to do, if I ever get up that way again. I would love to get together with those guys and do a video, because I think it's very inspirational, and it's an American success story, in my opinion. Just awesome stuff. You talk about having a vision and seeing it through. Janus Motorcycles. If those guys at Janus can do it, any one of you can do it. Boss, do the Super Cup wave. People don't know what we're talking about. So there's the biker wave, right? So okay, we're backwards. Like right now, I'm looking at myself. I got the wrong side. Okay, but anyway, there's the biker wave, right? Which you pass on another motorcycle. So you're riding down the road, and there's another motorcycle coming this way. You give them a wave, and the wave is two fingers. You put down two fingers like this, right? So that's the standard biker wave. But I have this Honda Super Cub. Okay, so the Super Cub it's a tiny little, like almost effeminate looking thing, right? And so when I'm on it, and other guys on motorcycles wave to me, I go like this. Because this fits a lot better than this when you're riding a Super Cub. Dan Rose, Janus Motorcycles in South. Oh, I'm corrected. Yes, South Bend, Indiana, not New York. Yes, I'm sorry. I don't know why I pictured them in upstate New York. If any of you guys have a contact with the people at Janus, tell them I would love to do something with them as far as reviewing their. I don't want to take one of their bikes, but just reviewing their business and telling their story and how they because that is, I'm telling you, that's a great American success story. They're not billionaires, but they designed a product and they put it into production, and it's sold, and people use it and they love it. And those guys are truly living the American dream. People give. I have seen people give them a shit because they use a Chinese motor. They're sourcing what they can. They're sourcing what's available and what's practical for their uses. I'm sure they're sourcing to a price point, and they're using a Chinese Honda clone engine. All right, what are you gonna do? Jim Roberts, Paul Sr. was not a bike builder. He was a bike assembler. He never fabricated anything. Well, his kid did, and his team did. And just because he's not the one that's actually doing the bending and the cutting and the welding doesn't mean that he wasn't building motorcycles. He put together the team that was able, and the operation that was able to do that. So by default, yeah, he's a bike builder. And I'm not saying that I'm a Paul Senior fan, because I'm really not. I thought the show was ridiculous. I think that the bikes that they build are just not. I mean, I just don't get that, right? It's not my thing. But I won't take anything away from the guy. He's a brilliant businessman with a tremendous amount of drive, and he created an empire. And I'll tell you what, a lot of automotive shows, a lot of automotive media would never have existed if it wasn't for what they broke ground with that whole Orange County choppers thing, right? Because the average people were watching this thing for the drama, for the breaking, throwing chairs and doing all kinds of stupid shit, yelling at each other. The general public started watching this. You didn't have to. My grandmother knew who the Orange County choppers guys was, and she had no idea what it was, But because they were able to break that barrier and get the average viewer interested in machines, right? That opened the door for all of the automotive-based programming that came about afterwards, and Velocity Network, and then Motor Trend, and all of that. You could trace most of that back to Orange County choppers. Jimmy Hat, Suzuki or Yamaha? Suzuki. I don't know how. Oh, Yamaha's building a lot of really cool shit lately. So the thing is, so I talked about this before. If you go back traditionally, now I don't know how it is today, right? Because I'm not up on modern Japanese bikes, right? I've only gotten back into bikes over the last few years. So there's a lot of these big segments that I haven't been paying any attention to. But if you go back to the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, you had a pecking order of size with motorcycles, physical size. So Honda and Kawasaki both built middle-sized bikes, okay? Yamaha always built smaller bikes. So Yamaha bikes would always be smaller in an inch or two in every dimension than Hondas or Kawasaki's. Suzuki's always built them an inch or two larger in every dimension than the equivalent Hondas or Kawasaki's. So you had big Suzuki, you had medium Honda Kawasaki, you had small Yamaha. And I felt back in those days, the Yamahas were just physically too small. I found them physically too small. When I was into sport bikes in the late 90s, and I got a ride on an R1, and a friend of mine had bought one, and I took her for a romp around the area, and I was turned off by it because when I got on, like when I got into full tuck, right, and I'm gonna bang this thing up through the gears, it was way too small. I didn't feel right. You know what I mean? It was like when I looked forward, I didn't see any motorcycle that had a wall in front of me, was hanging over the bars. And I said, no, this is just too small for me. This bike's built for pimps, not for me. But that said, I always preferred Kawasaki's out of all of those. Yami's is smaller. I'm building a Yamaha bike. Yes, look at, again, I don't know. I can't tell you what it is these days, right? Because I haven't tried any of these modern bikes on for size. But I can tell you for sure, you go like, let's say the 1980s, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s. There were physical differences, physical size differences. Suzuki's are always the biggest. So if you've got, let's say, a standard bike, right? The UJM, okay, of 1985, let's just say. The Suzuki version of that CC, let's say a 750, right, is going to be the largest bike of them all, right? And then the Honda and the Kawasaki are going to be the same size, physically size. And then the Yamaha is going to be the smallest of the bunch. And you really notice the difference when you park a Yamaha next to a Suzuki, and you say, and then you can really see the difference. Speed Demon. An engine builder can build you a turbo speedbolt engine from scratch, a dirt track motor, or a nitro funny car engine. An assembler just rebuilds or adds performance parts, not one completely from scratch. Well, now I got to tell you, as far as like the nitro motors, no, there really is no engine building in that. There's no finesse at all. Those engines are all just made of disposable parts. And the clearances and everything inside are so large and so sloppy because it's the only way they'll live under those circumstances. There really is no finesse to building a nitro motor. You know, people think it's like, oh, no, it's like the exact opposite of like a Formula One type of thing. You know, nitro motors are just big, sloppy, disposable hunks of aluminum, and you just cycle through the parts. Nobody really pays very much attention to details. Jimmy Hat, what about two-stroke or four-stroke for an enduro? Personally, I like the reliability of two strokes. For an enduro, four-stroke. For an enduro or four-stroke. For a dirt bike, two-stroke. Pack of two-stroke sport bikes. We don't have that. We haven't had packs of two-stroke sport bikes around here in a long, long, long time. Oh, geez, look what time it is. This was a really fast show. This just flew by. Huh. We'll hang for another couple of minutes. Love you 99 ZX7R. And Fubar just put up the link to our merch. Again, thank you, Fubar. You are awesome, my brother. So, UncleTony'sGarage.com. If you want to buy one of our shirts, our hats, we have stickers. I think Kathy is working on getting some other stuff in the store. So, everything we have is listed there. UncleTony'sGarage.com. Greatly appreciated. Anything you guys buy, we always appreciate it. And she's working on something to include with sales, which is this is so ridiculous. It's so. I'll talk about it when it's ready to go. Thank you, Fubar. Craig Simpson, thank you for the super chat. Uncle Tony is the Keanu Reeves of hot rodding. I never thought of myself that way. Anyone here rode any Ducati bikes? I had a 750 Monster for a little while. Let's see. Oh, wow, a tech question. GMG 254. Sir, what is the best sealant for head gasket leaks? Thanks, man. Depends on the leak. I've done videos on this. Depends on the leak. If the leak is between the two cylinders, there's no sealer you could ever use. If the leak is from an oil passage to the combustion chamber, there is no sealer that will ever work on that. If the leak is from a water jacket to the combustion chamber, then you can use any additive, any of these head gasket can fixes that use sodium silicate. So sodium silicate, what it is it's a liquid, okay? And when it's exposed to a temperature pressure differential like you would find between a water jacket and a combustion chamber, it solidifies and becomes like glass, and it fills the gap. Um, Sometimes it works a long time. Sometimes it holds just a little while. But if the leak is from a water jacket to the combustion chamber, any of those additives that have sodium silicate in them will work. Hayden, can I get a shout out to my son, Adriel? Of course, Adriel. There's your shout out. Yeah, water glass. So farmers call it water glass because it's something that they use with eggs to seal the surfaces of eggs. And there you go. You got a secondary shout out from Zero. Okay, and Firefly is going with me one step further, and he's saying that at 200 degrees Fahrenheit, sodium silicate rejects water and dries. Okay. End of time. I bought some chopper magazines off an old biker that was in early Easy Riders. He had a dual engine Kawasaki drag bike that looked like death on wheels. Oh man, some of those bikes from the 70s, they were just amazing. 2 and 3 engine, the top fuel bikes of the day, right? There was one called the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe that was 3 Honda 750s, 3 bored and stroked Honda CB750 motors on the one frame. It was like, look that one up. Look that one up. If you're into like insane drag bikes, look up the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe. That was also the name of a railroad, but that was what they called this bike. 2112 Bangkok. Howdy, 2112. So guys, I am going to call it a night because I'm tired. I got up really early this morning, and it's just been crazy, the heat out here. And I don't have any air conditioning here now. Again, it has taken a dump. It's like the 4th time. So I am going to call it a night. Dr. Art will be back. As I said before, Dr. Art, he's taking a week off. He's a brand new grandfather. So he's spending a week with his family, and he'll be back next Wednesday night. Guys, everybody contributed super chat. Thank you so much. Always appreciated. Never expected. Everybody contributed with your presence and your conversation. I am eternally grateful to you guys. You have no idea. It's you watching these things and liking it and commenting on it and all of that allows me to do what I do here. I'm forever in your debt. Our fantastic mods, Fubar, Zero, Mexican Spec, Ari when he's around. Guys, thank you so much as always. I love you. What can I tell you? Thank you. These guys have been around. I'm doing this channel for 6 years now. These guys have been around since the beginning. And it's just like, why? Thank you. And that's it. I have no idea what to promote or talk about. I have no idea what I'm going to do tomorrow. I have no idea. I don't know. So I'm just going to go home now and play with my dogs for a while. And thanks for hanging out, guys. I'm going to hit the out button, and that's going to be the end of it for now. Good night, all.